No Twain.
No more Twain.
No Twain but one.
But one. No more Twain.
All right. So.
Hello, everyone. I'm James.
And I'm Latanya.
And we were asked to participate in No More Twain.
Yeah.
From our perspective of becoming one.
Because we're one.
Because we're one.
Yes.
All right. So here we go. We're going to dive right into it.
Okay.
So the thought behind it is, from a natural and a spiritual standpoint, how do believers become one? Right?
Well, I think she wanted to know how we became
one.
Oh,
how we became one. Yeah. Okay. So let's
get it.
Okay. All right, cool. No problem. I guess you're cutting
edit.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So how do we become one?
How did we?
How did we become one?
Yeah.
How did we become one? Actually, I believe before we got married, we was already in the mindset of one.
Okay.
And let me explain from a spiritual standpoint. We both had our individual purpose, but when we spoke about our future together, we brung our purpose together.
Yeah.
So therefore, we was in the same mindset when it came to purpose and ministry.
Okay.
So we already start working in one.
That's true. And
the main reason why we got married was for purpose. I remember when we went to Africa and we preached together, and the pastor, after we stepped down, the pastor came and said, "Well, who is she to you?" And I said, "Just my friend. You know, we just do ministry together." And he's like, "No,
that's not good.
That's not good." So that is a clear example of, from a spiritual standpoint, how we became one before we actually got married.
Yeah, looking at how our purposes met each other's purpose, and how to not allow one person's purpose to outshine the other, or to get in the way of the other, but to actually see how they complement one another.
Right.
Yeah.
I think it's very important especially for believers in this time, that we just don't get married because we are swayed by one appearance or one capital, but for purpose. When you have purpose together, that will supersede any situations or any breakdown that you may have in that marriage, because you understand that it's bigger than you.
Yeah.
And oftentimes, especially as young couples or ones that have not lived a particular amount of time in life and had different experiences, when you get married, it becomes all about you.
It becomes all
right?
about
It's
you.
all about how we can build our life. Now, the idea of marriage is, and not from a spiritual standpoint, but from a natural standpoint, from the world, is, the white picket fence, 2.5 children, a dog, and all the different things like that. So there's nothing wrong with that. But when you're a believer, that is a false reality, because your idea of becoming one is quite different than what God has called us to become one.
Yeah.
Ephesians 5:25 talks about, how, I ought to love you like Christ loved the church.
Right.
We understand what that text means, for me, is unto death. And how do, I keep you a lovely bride is through the word of God, right? So we understand what the text is saying. So again, I read this right before we talked about, not the word is not just the biblical standpoint, but it's also how I speak to you on a regular basis, how I compliment you, how I encourage you, how I hold you accountable, in the way that I hold you accountable. It's not mean-spirited, it's in love. My idea of us becoming one actually happened before we actually got married, from a spiritual standpoint. So that's my perspective.
You're absolutely right. And I guess I'm stuck with the natural standpoint, which is the fun part. No, but we are constantly checking in with each other, and discovering what makes our intimacy appropriate
Correct.
for us, and what makes our intimacy exciting for us and fun and enjoyable. And that constant check-in, I think, is also part of becoming one, and part of the sacrifice that you make as an individual, because my desire, my hope is to please you.
Correct. And
not to just simply be looking out for myself.
Right.
And vice versa.
Right.
And so that natural aspect of becoming one, sexually, I think is something that we can't be afraid to talk about, something that we can't be afraid to discuss, something that we can't be afraid to be honest with each other about, and to refuse to be scared to say something is hard or difficult or uncomfortable, and not be afraid to agree,
right, or
explore, I guess I would say, to explore other opportunities and other, opportunities to have fun.
Right. Yeah. I agree.
Nice
I
mean,
from a natural standpoint too, I believe becoming one from a natural standpoint as well is understanding that your spouse, as we talked about many years ago, is a reflection of who you are. I have the fortunate benefit of marrying my best friend. Like, we knew each other for over 20 years before we got married. And one of the challenges that we face early on is we identify each other to who we were when we was younger, not really making space for who we are or who we were at that particular present time. So becoming one is the same way as you individually. I would encourage anyone to be whole before they become one with someone else. Like, in other words, I ought to be one with myself before I try to combine my oneness with someone else. Because she doesn't complete me. Right. She's a part of me, but she doesn't complete me.
And one of the things you said a while ago, and it has stuck with me in terms of becoming one, you said that you choose to love me and you choose to love who I'm becoming.
Correct.
So it gives me space to evolve. It doesn't, you're not holding me captive to the woman I was 20 years ago,
Correct.
nor are you holding me captive to the woman I was 3 years ago. That there's space for me to evolve, there's space for me to become. And I think awarding your spouse that space is essential, because we are still becoming, we are still developing, we are still finding out more and more about ourselves. We didn't come into a marriage whole, come into a marriage knowledgeable of who you are, but you can't come in fully knowledgeable of who you're going to become, because you haven't become yet. You know that there's a purpose and there's a goal you're attempting to achieve, but you don't know what that's going to look like or how that's going to play out in your life. So to marry someone who is willing to allow you to evolve, to allow you to become, and willing to love you through the process of becoming, I think is one of the most freeing things I've experienced in our marriage.
I agree. Again, I just want to kind of go back to being one with yourself and giving yourself space to grow and to become one as an individual as you walk with your spouse, and understand we are part of our experiences, our experience individually and our experiences that we have with our spouse. So within that, me becoming becomes a partnership with you. So that means as I have these different experiences, I have to share them with you, because if I experience something and it makes me sad, and if I don't share it with you, it's going to affect you. Right? So therefore, there's no more of me just becoming one with myself. Now I'm with you, we have to become one together.
And that's a big sacrifice, especially for men. That's a big sacrifice because you guys typically, not all men, and of course this is a broad generality, but you're not talkers. You're not, you are problem solvers. Like there's a problem, I see it, I solved it, I don't need your input. And so that understanding that when you're struggling with something, when you bring that into the house, that it immediately affects the temperature of the house, the way the house feels, and being willing to allow your spouse in, I think is a big sacrifice as it pertains to becoming one.
Yeah, it's a challenge because even if we go back to Genesis, where Adam had the responsibility of managing the garden, when you look at it, it didn't speak about his emotions; it spoke about his authority. So he always operated with authority, and he operated logically. So we are an extension of Adam. So therefore, when we look at men, like you just said, that's how we operate. So we need to understand like how we operate, and then we have to be willing to allow ourselves to be vulnerable in areas that we don't want to be vulnerable. Right? Because a lot of men say that they're unable to, but that's not true, because the Bible clearly tells us that you are my rib. So if you're my rib and you are sensitive and you are emotional, that means you come from me. So therefore, I have to tap into that. So in order for us to become one, I have to tap into some uncomfortable areas of me, and allow myself to become one with you. Now, I may not understand it, and I have to purposely listen, and ask questions and be quiet. And then other times I have to, and you know me, like I ask a lot of questions because I really want to understand. And maybe from a feeling standpoint, I may not feel how you feel, but what I can do is, because I love you, and again, Ephesians 5:25 says that I ought to love you like I love myself, right? So therefore, if I want the best for me, and I want to experience joy and I want to experience peace, then I have to make sure that I am divulging that on you. Like I am allowing you to speak and hear you and be sensitive and give you a sense of peace, because if you have peace, I have peace.
And it's vice versa, right? You give me all of that, but I also have to be mindful of the fact that sometimes he's not going to immediately tap into that place. That it's going to take it's a process for him to get to that place where he says, this is how I feel. This is what I'm thinking. There are steps he has to take in order to get to that place. And I have to be patient with him getting to that place, which means I've got to slow down a little bit. I can't look for instant gratification. And in becoming one, you give each other that space. You give each other that understanding. You give each other that kindness. You extend that grace.
You extend that grace. So from a natural, I think, did I speak from a natural standpoint?
I did. I don't know if you did.
Okay. I think from a natural standpoint, I know you spoke about it because you kind of talked about the intimacy part, the physical part. From a natural standpoint, I would have to say that it is, for me, I would have to say it's more about listening and catering.
Is that hard?
Than sexual. No, I don't think so, because it's part of man's nature to provide, right? But
not cater to.
Not cater to. Yeah. No, and what I mean by cater to is, be okay, because what they say is, mama not happy, no one's happy, right? So oftentimes men kind to bow down and like, whatever you say, whatever you want, X, Y, and Z. So when I use the word cater, I don't mean to completely submit to whatever she wants. Right. But what I'm saying is, I hear what you're saying, I realize and I understand how much it means to you. And then I respond to that in such a way that it doesn't give not only you, but, you know, the family, the idea that I'm weak. You know, I'm weak. I'm like, whatever you say, whatever you go. So when I say cater, in other words, I'm talking about serving my wife.
And I think that it's important for a woman to be cognizant of the fact that she's not belittling her husband by forcing him to cater to her, by taking that, you know, idea, if mama's not happy, no one's happy, that if when you take that and you run with it and you force your will on your husband, that you can crush his spirit and minimize what he brings to the table as it pertains to being a man, a father, you know, the prophet, priest, and power of the home. You can minimize that and end up with the type of man that you actually don't want. You know, you think you want a man who's going to cater to your every whim, but when you have that, you realize it's tiring because all of the responsibility is on you. But when you are with a man who's willing to take on his responsibility, and by taking on his responsibility, he also knows there's a moment where sometimes he's going to have to tell me no, and does it with love and with grace, then the responsibility of how the family works and operates is not on me, it's shared. Yeah, so that's awesome. That's good.
Okay. So that's all I have right now.
That's all you have?
Yeah, we can record it again just to see if we come up with something different.
Okay. So this is us. And we're out.
Thank you.